Hi, and welcome to Marketplace Masters, sponsored by Merchant Spring, your go-to for marketplace analytics and agency client reporting. I'm your host, Paul Sonneveld, and today we're diving into channel distribution strategies on Amazon. Joining me today are experts from Values On, Frieda Kuhn and Florian Schneider. Let me briefly introduce my distinguished guests for today. Frieda, with his extensive background in digital sales, e-commerce, and strategy, has held key roles at Puma Group, including General Manager for Switzerland and Austria, and the Global Director of Business Unit Management. He also brings experience from the Boston Consulting Group, where he worked on high-impact projects. Florian is an Amazon seller, or was an Amazon seller since 2019, and leads Values On's distribution business unit. He has collaborated with startups and companies across various industries like fitness equipment, supplements, and FMCG. Since 2022, he has spearheaded Values On's internal distribution business, partnering with brands to sell their products exclusively under Values On's account. And together, Frieda and Florian will share their valuable expertise and perspectives on optimizing your Amazon distribution strategy, building successful brands, and navigating the complexities of e-commerce. Well, thank you so much for being on today's episode, Frieda and Florian.
A pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Hello, Paul. Thanks.
I need to sit a little bit lower. I noticed that I'm sitting probably on a very high chair. I'm trying to get my heads aligned with yours. There we go.
We try to move up a bit.
Yeah, that's perfectly aligned now. Excellent. Okay, well, look, let's start off maybe with you, Frieda. I've spoken to a lot of agencies on these podcasts, and I work with hundreds of agencies on a daily basis. I mean, not me personally, obviously, but you guys are a little bit different and unique. And I'd love to just set the scene, give us a quick intro about Values On and how you guys started out.
Yeah, actually, the story of Values On starts even a few years before Values On, because together with Hanno Deile, my co-founder, we founded a company in the sleep business, Third of Life, and we grew on Amazon. And from our former network, you just mentioned a few of my former jobs. People approached us and said, "Hey, can't you help us on become successful on Amazon? How do you do it?" And that's when we founded Values On. So we are entrepreneurs, we are seller, we live it still every day, and we of course also the same time we also live the same pain as all our clients. And that's when we founded Values On 6 years ago. We are Munich based, we are agency, we are consulting company, but we are also a distributor, where we act as a distributor or broker for our clients, and that will be one of the topics today. That's it, mainly how Values On has been created. It's driven by entrepreneurs, also our client managers, and that's also our approach for our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for giving that introduction and setting the scene there. So let's try and unpack our topic. And today I want to start quite high level. What are your, you bring the sort of perspective, particularly from Germany here. You're obviously an agency, but do consultancy as well. How do you see the current Amazon ecosystem, and what does it take to succeed in 2024, particularly from a distribution angle?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say, of course, but when we just look at one country like Germany now, where more than 50% of the e-commerce is covered by Amazon and it's still growing, we see a massive change and collapse in the supply chain. That's one of the things. To give an introduction, the supply chain, when it comes from manufacturer to consumer, manufacturers are coming in heavily. On the other side, also the system, the established system between the brands and supplier and manufacturers, but also their retail partners online and offline. With all the buy box topics, we see massive problems which we have to solve, and mostly the brands can solve on their own. So that is one of the topics why we think the sales channel of marketplace, and especially Amazon, has to be managed in a professional way. It has to be managed very specifically, how to deal with it as a vendor, as a seller, or even using a distributor broker model. And that is our journey into offering this full service. The next thing is especially how to play on Amazon. Most of the brands try to cover or try to sell all of their product portfolio on Amazon, which is fine, but usually it's I call it the Highlander game. It's a bestseller game. So you try to establish and build bestsellers. To make it very briefly, and the other thing what is very special about Amazon is the performance marketing side, which we also cover, of course, but the performance marketing side, which is the sales department, next to the content, which is very important, the two main pillars. Nevertheless, and that's my last point on that one, there is some other very important tasks which we have to cover. This is having the right product. So we also develop the right product with our clients. We do this database, we do it kind of target re-engineered product development together with the clients. We need a very data-driven business management. So we not only want to cover content and performance marketing.
Thank you for that big picture perspective there. That's very useful. I want to zoom in a little bit more on some of these strategic approaches, right? Particularly around distribution, because even before we started this podcast, we were talking about probably 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. You have to choose. You're either a vendor or a seller, right? And then we evolved from, hey, let's move from vendor to becoming a seller. And then 2 years ago, we started talking about, hey, how do you do the hybrid approach? This model continues to evolve constantly. What are the strategic approaches that you see today in terms of how do you maximize your sales and grow your business across the Amazon platform?
Yeah, we see it exactly the same way, and we saw it in our development in our own company, but also with the clients, to be honest. We also did not have the same approach 3 or 5 years ago. I want to start maybe one level more up. You either don't sell on Amazon, which, well, there might be some companies who still consider that. Then you sell to Amazon as a vendor, being in the vendor program. You can be a seller. Or yes, you can also have this selling being done by a third party. It can be one of your retail clients, but can also be this broker distributor model. Nevertheless, most of these, whatever model you chose, we see a development for certain reasons, and that will be the main part of the podcast, in our opinion, to show what are the cases, what cases appeared for our clients, when did it make sense to add another model, like not only being a vendor, but also being a seller, and especially, as we call it, this not only hybrid, using 2 models, but also now using 3 models, the broker and distributor. We call it tri-hybrid model. And it's, again, not always choosing now one of the 3. It's really like seamlessly orchestrating between the 3 channels. And that makes it so interesting, because for different cases and use cases, we are using all of the 3. Of course, there is an emphasis, mostly a focus on one of the 3, no question. But this will be the most important and interesting part, in my opinion, to go through a few examples when to use number 2 or number 3. And then it's exactly as you said, then it's just a question of orchestrating and not of selection.
So really, I just want to sort of paraphrase before we sort of dive into the detail here. Really, what we're talking about now is really the next evolution of around, being as a brand, actually having multiple distribution avenues towards Amazon: seller, vendor, and then you mentioned sort of the broker model, and using a combination of all those 3. Now, before we go into specific case studies and examples, can you just explain, particularly for those, maybe sellers that are not used to the terminology, how would you put the broker model in layman's terms, in terms of mechanically how that works? And I'm sure we'll go into a lot more detail in a sec. Just conceptually be great.
Yeah, I just want to add one more point to what Frieder just said is, and nowadays, especially in 2024, the approach that we have is, it's more about diversifying your business as well, right? So you either, as he said, you used to be either a seller or a vendor, you choose your approach, then you moved into maybe considering being a hybrid. But now Amazon is so multi-dimensional and it's so complex throughout the years that it is really about diversifying your business. So what exactly is a broker or a distributor? Well, I usually frame it that way. You could look at it as let's say as a strategic distribution channel partner for your Amazon business. So what that means is if you work with a broker that combines the convenience of a vendor approach with the expertise and scale potential of a seller. So you sell your products in that particular case to a broker, and then the broker does all the heavy lifting. He sells your products in whatever distribution channel, whatever market, Amazon marketplace that you decide on. So there's obviously different types of brokers, but a real good broker is someone that covers the entire value chain, meaning they do the SEO for you, they do the keyword research, they build the listing, they build out the content in a very strategic way. They handle all the PPC, your campaign management, they do price promotions on Amazon, customer service. So everything from A to Z, you don't have to worry about anything. It's basically just like a turnkey solution. And the good thing about that is you have basically 0% of the risk, but you get 100% of the upside. So that's how I usually summarize what a broker model is.
Yeah, I find that very interesting because that's certainly a refreshing definition of maybe the one that's floating around in my head based on past experiences. Because the way you're describing is really you're talking about a full service offer that the broker does, actively managing your Amazon account, and on top of that, purchasing the stock. Whereas traditionally, certainly here in Australia, brokers have a bit of a bad reputation for like just selling stock, but not actually doing all the hard work. But really, what you're saying is actually this model is different to that. It's like the full service agency with the whole purchasing of stock associated with that.
Yeah. And usually, just to add one quick point, usually what most companies claim is that we do everything for you, you don't have to worry about anything. But really, the good brokers you could see them as a partner, right? It's not someone that you hire, and it's not a service that they provide. It's more like a partnership, right? The better of a job I do as a broker, the better I sell your product, and the better I sell your product, the more money I can make, and the more money I can make, the more I can reorder. So it's a cycle, right? It all comes back to it. And I would love for people to look at this as a partnership rather than a service or an agency service.
Yeah,
absolutely. I can underline that because coming from a retail world, we have had in the former companies like Puma, we have had distributor for countries where Puma did not start their operations on their own, and that's exactly what it is. It's a partnership. It's a real sales channel partnership. And why do we see it like this? Because we are addressing companies that don't have the capabilities, the resources at all to be B2C. So a B2B company, which we have as a client, for example, they said we don't even want to build up B2C capabilities, resources, or anything. It can be a manufacturer, which is even less B2B, sorry to say sometimes, than brands. And it can be also D2C companies, which are specialized in social or other Google or shopping topics. And they say, guys, maybe it's better you take care of it. Can also be for a certain time. And that's when we also will come to dimensions. It's about countries. It's about, can be product topics. It can be period of time topics when this model can jump in. And that's exactly where we are heading to the examples now a bit.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would love to, I think that's kind of the theory, right? I would love to hear some examples, or even just maybe within your own client portfolio. How did they get to a conclusion of using multiple channels? Why did it make sense for that client? What does it look like? If you can share some examples with us, that would be very interesting.
Of course.
Yeah, sure. So what we've seen throughout the years, obviously as an agency working with hundreds of clients, we've always seen the same issues and challenges arise, right? So I'll give you a quick example of, let's say you're a vendor and you sell on Amazon, and all of a sudden your products get crapped, right? And Amazon decides to not reorder the product or leaves the buy box, and the product has been doing well over the years and gathered some good reviews and it's been doing well. And all of a sudden Amazon decides to leave. What happens with the listing? If you have a backup option, you could still sell that listing. You could sell the product rather to Amazon, you sell it to a broker, and then the broker continues to sell the product. So that's one example if you're a vendor. It's just like a backup option so that whatever you build throughout the years doesn't get lost and you continue your success with that product.
I think
Does that make sense?
This buy box topic is one of the things, like being out of stock because the buyer doesn't order anymore. They do external price crawling and find somewhere in the internet, they find a lower price and either they reduce the price as well, or as a seller, they take away the buy box. It's always about alternatives to be still active. If you have the pressure from annual negotiations, you at least have an alternative. Of course, you can also do it as a seller, and that's what I said. It's not always then the broker or distributor model is the solution, but it can be one of the very fast and good ones. And one of the examples I like also very much is one of our clients. He's just preparing for a certain emergency in case his account is maybe blocked or anything else. And he said, I want to be able to sell my products the next day still. I don't want to lose sales of 1 week, 1 month, or whatever. It's too important. So we set up a certain emergency system for them to be able to sell his products right the next day. Things like that, like account suspensions, or the same thing, removal of selling authorizations. So that's these topics of jumping in, for example, one of the big use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And then is there, I mean, the theme I'm hearing here is there's a big use case around building in redundancy in the system so that you can maintain operations, keep selling, particularly if your vendor account is temporarily disrupted or permanently disrupted. And my follow-up question there would be, how do you think about, because at that point, having another seller account versus a distributor account could also be an option, but for which type of clients and customers and what type of scenarios actually does this broker model provide a better fit than, hey, I've got a seller account and I'm running that? Because, why go for the broker model and in what situations?
Yeah, I'll take that as well. So, I mean, regardless of your sales strategy or your approach, we just touched on an example of a vendor. If you're a vendor, Frieder just mentioned a few points and I did as well. So it's more like a backup option in case something happens to your account or Amazon decides to not reorder products. But then also from a growth perspective, from a strategic growth perspective, it could also make sense, right? So I'll give you another example. Let's assume you are a seller and you sell in Australia and you're very successful and you've maximized your potential in Australia. And now you decide you want to take your brand abroad to Europe, right? It's very complex to set up the infrastructure in Europe. It's very fragmented. So there's a lot of marketplaces in Europe. You have countries like the UK, like Germany, Spain, France, and each country has their own specific regulations. Not just that, but they also have different tax implications. So for you now, in order to test Europe and to see if Europe works for you, you would not have to go and set up all the infrastructure. You would have to register taxes in all these countries. You would have to make sure that your products are compliant. And if your product is compliant in France, it might not be compliant in Spain, for example, right? So, and it's very very costly and takes a lot of time and very resource intensive. So if you now have a partner, someone that already has set up the entire infrastructure for that continent and is registered in all the countries and knows exactly how the product should look like and what are the rules in the UK, and knows all that, and now takes your product and launches it in all these European marketplaces. First of all, it's a lot quicker. You feedback right away. You get feedback instantly, basically, as soon as the product launches. And it takes out the guesswork, right? Before you actually do the heavy investment. So either you're fine with having the broker selling your products now in Europe, or at some point you decide that you want to take that in-house as well, and you want to take that on board yourself. And after some time, you then set up the infrastructure and you register for taxes because you've seen it work. But then that's sort of a bridge approach. You start with the broker, it's going very well, and then you take it back and you sell yourself, or you continue to work with the broker because it's easier. You need less resources, you need less people managing the marketplaces. Just two examples there.
So yeah, if I may add one point, just so it's really this regional dimension, either from Germany to Europe in one day, kind of. If you don't want to do that pan-European step with taxes and all the other challenges, from the US or Australia to Europe, or of course also for European companies to go to the US, which is also possible. Relatively fast, very cost efficient, exactly as Florian has explained it.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely resonates with us because many years ago when we were running an agency here in Australia, we did bring some clients from Australia to the US, and regulatory issues aside and setup, that in itself is a big burden. But also, of course, you start with, a seller account that has, no history and isn't an asset. And then you have products that have no reviews and everything, right? Now, of course, on the product side, you may not be able to do something about that. You have to build that up. But at least you have a selling account that has a reputation, a history, is an asset, and you can sort of get going a lot quicker.
Absolutely, exactly, and that's also one of these new cases. And by the way, of course, we also have clients who go to the US and we support them with their own seller account or vendor approach. No question. We are coming back to the very beginning. It's about orchestrating. But if they go into a country where they don't want to make a bigger investment or anything, or they want to try some single products like product launches, new product, whatever development, then it's a very easy way to do it. We even do it in Germany right now for one of the partners who don't have any connection to B2C right now, rather B2B driven. And they say, let's just try it. Let's just sell a few products and see if it works, because for less money, we cannot try it out. And that's exactly this topics.
Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. So I'd love to go a little bit deeper on that, into that specific broker model. Let's, for argument's sake, I have a successful Amazon business here in Australia, and I do want to expand into Europe. And the broker model sounds like a really good short to medium term option for me. Take me through it. How does it actually work? How would I work with someone like yourself? What do I need to do and think about versus what will you do for me? And Florian already described some of this, but practically speaking, what does it look like?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the great advantage to that approach, to that model, to Amazon vendor, is it's very flexible. You could speak to a broker, you could negotiate things, it's a very flexible approach. It's not a set in stone approach that Amazon often has in terms of payment, in terms of payment terms as well, and their contracts. So that's certainly a big advantage. So it's a very individual approach. So let's say you decide you want to expand and you want to go to Europe. So the first thing that, of course, is to define the strategy with your partner, right? You want to be able to align with them in order to really understand where you can take this. And then the responsibility is mainly on the broker side, right? So what you have to make sure, obviously, is that there's always enough stock available, right? That's on you. That's your responsibility as the brand. And you might want to provide more insights into the product in terms of also digital assets. If you have any videos, if you've done any photography in the past, that's something that you want to share. So that's also on you, but not necessarily. A good broker is also someone that has in-house teams, graphic designers, and is able to portray your product in the most efficient way. Of course, always coordinating that with you. And then another responsibility that's on your side is the logistics. So you have to make sure that the products are being shipped to your partner. And apart from that, then it's really up to your strategic partner to make sure that the products are optimized, that the products are listed, that everything runs smooth, that the account is being monitored, that products are live and nothing gets flagged, and that the campaigns, the performance marketing campaigns, are efficiently running. And then you have regular performance reviews with your partner, with your broker, where you align on the strategy and see where things are going. And that's pretty much it. It's a very straightforward, very easy approach.
Great. Can I ask a few follow-up questions there? There's a few things. Sure. I just want to go one level deeper, right? Let me just outline a couple of questions, and then you can sort of tackle them. We'll do them in rapid fire. The first question I have around, does the broker buy the stock off me, or is it on consignment? And my second question is, what is the, and how do you, actually I've got multiple questions. Stock, do you buy the stock, or is it on consignment? Second thing is, how do we agree on a marketing budget? Because that's probably a tricky bit. And then thirdly, how do you deal with things like damages and returns that happen on the Amazon side of the fence, right? So, particularly on the vendor side, they can be but even on the seller side, it could be actually product issues. How do you carry that risk between the broker and the actual brand? Sorry, so there's three questions to unpack there. So a lot there. Feel free to just answer whatever you want to answer.
Let's start with the first one. Maybe Frieder can take the second or third.
Yeah.
So in terms of the model, this is as I said, it's very flexible, right? So I'll give you a few details here, but there's certainly more to it. So let's say the broker could buy your product. That's one opportunity. That's one possibility, right? So the broker buys your product at a wholesale price, right? That you both agree on, where you make your margin, then the broker buys it, and then it's his responsibility to sell the product. That could be one approach. Also, could be another approach where you guys are splitting the profit, right? So you basically provide the product at production price, so there's no margin on your side, but then the broker does all the heavy lifting and makes sure the product is optimized and sells on Amazon, and then you split whatever is left over. You split the contribution margin. It could also be an approach. So there's not a set in stone way to do this. It's more like, depending on your goals, depending on your situation, you can speak about it. It's a very flexible approach. That's a great thing about it.
Maybe let me add one part. It's when we talk of our approach, we buy the product. So we definitely buy the product because that's what we experience from our clients, that this is their favor. So we have set up the whole organization like this. We buy the product and pay the invoice. So we are like a key account partner to them. Very easy one. And then, of course, there are different ways how to contribute, as Florian has correctly mentioned right now. The marketing side is always in an exchange, of course, but at the end, we are also responsible for the marketing topics because usually our clients do not really know how it works. Of course, we explain them, we take them in as a partner, but like a key account seller in the offline world, they try to explain to the brand what they are doing. And of course, we are very transparent, by the way. So we are very data driven. We have a BI tool that is top notch, in my opinion. So we even share these KPIs with them. We try to explain what we are doing, how we are doing it. But of course, it has limits, and it's good it has limits because they should not, if they understood the entire Amazon world and business, they would do it on their own. That's exactly what they don't want to do. So it's very split in, we do everything. They only have to do the product development, the brand management, provide the product, ship them to Amazon, and we take over with the content. And that's also how we set up then the margin and the remuneration model, I would say. That's for the marketing. We try to explain that there is no real marketing budget, absolute marketing budget. What a lot of big companies are thinking about, okay, what's the absolute marketing budget for this month, for the year? We try to tell them, hey, if it's a percentage, so the moment it's running and we are growing, there is no absolute limit or something. We should just move on. But they usually fastly understand that. And maybe we can also, well, I don't know, did we answer the first two questions already correctly? Because the damages is, I think, a totally different topic.
Yeah, look, and obviously there's a lot of detail, but the real, I guess what I'm, my broader question here, and maybe it's way too much detail for today, but I'm interested, so I'm going to ask it anyway, is there are some things as a broker you can't really control, or, you could, but you'd be carrying like a disproportionate part of the risk. So I'm just trying to understand that balance between, hey, I'm just buying you a cost price for your product that as soon as it's in, everything is our responsibility, including marketing, including, if there's a faulty product and the product has to come back and there's a lot of damages and obviously that's going to cost you quite dearly. I just wanted to sort of get a sense, and I'm sure it's different for every category, product and agreement, but philosophically, like how you view that tension, right, between kind of risk versus kind of partnership.
So I think it always comes back to, of course, we do our homework first. We're not, or I'm not saying we, but in general, a broker, they would obviously validate the product first, right? So it has to obviously make sense to sell a product. The margin has to be right. There has to be potential in Amazon to actually to be for the risk to be worthwhile, right? But then at the end of the day, there's still risk involved, of course, right? So there's always this, the risk is always there. So it's, but then we try to do as much homework as we can and validate the product as good as we can, and then decide and also communicate with the partner.
It's a little bit like in the offline world still. I mean, you are a partner, you try to cover a few by a contract and by certain arrangements, of course. And there are other things where you just then have to talk and exchange. But that's also a development, a learning step by step, which we also did in the past 2 years. We learned from what happened, and it's a trial and error, as always in the marketplace world. And of course, you here and there you pay on top a little bit. You didn't cover a certain risk, but as I said, we always see it as a partnership, and they're very happy. They are very appreciating our services, so they also want to continue usually. And then you try to find a solution for it. But of course, yeah, there's always a certain risk.
Of course, yeah. There's no business without risk, of course.
I would say, yeah.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up here. But before we say our goodbyes, I just wanted to ask, for anyone that's tuning in live today or watching this on demand and just looking at this going, well, actually, this broker model or this tri-hybrid model that we're talking about actually really appeals to me, appeals to my particular use case. What's the best way to continue the conversation with the both of you?
Well, it would be great to get in contact with us directly. I think you will have our contact. There is 2 things. We are already working with other agencies and consulting companies, also the big strategy consulting companies, to be honest. So we are also always open for an exchange with other agencies, consulting companies in the US, in Australia. We are not in a light tower or completely closed or something. We do that already with strategic partners, so we are also open to have that conversation. We are very much in discussions for this last case of distributor, when companies want to exit Amazon completely, which obviously then they could still cover it by distributor, but also when entering, and we had that case already. So in my opinion, just contact us through you and through our on LinkedIn, and we are open to discuss all the approaches.
Perfect. Well, on that note, Florian and Frieder, thank you so much for appearing on our episode today and really bringing to our audience a new, a different way to think about Amazon distribution. I really enjoyed, as you probably would have picked up, I really enjoyed quizzing you about this particular topic, and I loved hearing those particular use cases, particularly around, how do you build your backup options, or how do you use this model to quickly or more rapidly enter and test a new market before fully investing yourself. So thank you so much for being on the show. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in this live discussion on optimizing your Amazon channel distribution. For more insights, visit our video on demand library at merchantspring.io. Now, if you do want to streamline your analytics, reach out to me, DM me on LinkedIn to learn how Merchant Spring can help. Last but not least, I'd love to hear your topic suggestions for future episodes. Let me know, and I'll do my best to find the right expert to address them. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Until next time, take care.